Well, welcome to our digital workshop on social media, living online, social media and COVID. I'm Dr. Andrew Evans from Sun Pacific College. I am just so excited that you have taken the time out of your day to come and join me today live as we talk about what it looks like in the world we live today. I mean, today would really be preferable if we were together face to face. That's something that I know I would enjoy. But this is part of the world that we're living in the pandemic. So as we're doing this digital workshop, I want to encourage you to interact. And so the way you interact is actually you would mute your microphone. So if your microphone is live, if you could just mute it, and then use the chat bar that's there and GoToMeeting, and you can ask your questions for that. We're going to have a Q&A time at the end, but if you're finding that you have a question throughout, just ask right away. We'll write it down and we'll get to those questions as best we can. So without further ado, I just want to get into what we're going to be doing, talking about particularly social media and COVID. One of the things that I love to do and that I get to do here at Summit is I get to teach about culture, and I get to teach about issues that particularly teenagers are dealing with. And one of the things that we're seeing in the research is this surge in the use of social media. It's not really a surprise because most of us, if not all of us, are stuck at home. We were taken out of our schools and we had to do schooling online. We're taken out of our jobs and many of us had to work at home. And so we had to use whatever we had, and social media became a big part of that. In fact, in order for me to stay in contact with some of my friends and family and students, I actually got an Instagram account because I didn't have one before, because I'm like, I don't need that. Social media, maybe Instagram's here for a little bit, then it's gone. But what we're seeing is that social media and being online is a real important part of our life. And so the fact is that social media is everywhere. And so we're going to walk through that. What does it look like to live online in a way that helps us to stay mentally healthy, but also faithful in our relationship with Jesus, so that we can follow him in the virtual world as well as the real world, or the physical world? We're going to talk about that, and how those two actually work together as opposed to being separated. So as we look at social media being everywhere, there's four types or four main categories to social media. So the first one is this: it's what we call social networking sites. Now, a social networking site can be defined as an online platform primarily designed for connecting with other people. So when you think of a platform that helps you connect, I mean, obviously, I'm not a boomer, but as a Gen X, my first thought is Facebook, because that's how I would, connect. I remember in 2006 when Facebook came out, that was the way that we began to connect with people all across the world, people we hadn't seen in a long time, people I'd gone to college with. But for Generation Z, or for most of you watching, those are things like Instagram or Snapchat. Those tend to be platforms that allow you to connect in a way. Even things like Netflix Party, where you can watch a movie and you can chat with each other while you're watching a movie together. Things like those kind of things where it's connecting you. The second type of social media that maybe you haven't thought about are what we call user-generated sites. Right? So a user-generated site are online platforms where people can upload content such as videos or photos or music they have created, curated, or remixed and share it with other people. Now, if we were here physically, I would ask you, what are some of the user-generated sites that you know the most? And probably you're going to say one of the number one sites is TikTok, and as well YouTube. What's interesting in research that was recently done with Generation Z, or iGen, those that were born about 1994 to about 2006 or 2010, is that YouTube is right now one of the most used social media sites. And so it's social because there's comments, but you're interacting with people through the videos you're posting. Same thing with TikTok, those kind of things. If you're a gamer, things like Twitch, or if you're an Xbox or Microsoft PC user, things like Mixer, where you're able to upload content, make my son loves to watch the video games where he's watching people like play, either whether it's Minecraft or Forza, or some of you play Fortnite, and the different games, and where you play, somebody plays and they talk about it, and there's an interaction there. And so that's a social media platform. The third one, which probably is the least known, is what we call trading and marketing sites. So these are online platforms where people buy, sell, or trade material goods. So for most of us, my generation in particular, we love Facebook Marketplace, where you can go and buy stuff. There's buy and sell, things like Craigslist, but it's sites where you can go, you can upload your stuff to be bought. And so there's different sites that are like that you can engage with other people. And the last one are what we call play and game sites. So play and game sites, they can be online platforms where people play internet games with other people. There's a whole variety. I have some students that are huge gamers and they love to play video games. And one of the things is they connect with other people. I remember some students, I don't remember the name of the game, but they would come and tell me, oh, I got to go because we have to meet with our clan because we're planning our battle. And those of you who are gamers, you'll know the games I'm talking about, where they just love to, they just come together. And that's what's an interesting thing is we're seeing even now during COVID that some of you are spending time with your friends online playing a game and talking to each other. One thing my son does with his friends is they created a Minecraft world where 4 of them gather together and they're building and they're interacting with each other, talking and collaborating on how they're going to build stuff and what it's going to look like. And so you're doing that, or maybe they're playing Chell. Some of you love to play Chell, or other games where you're talking with friends and you're connecting maybe even more than you would have connected when you were in school and when you can meet with people physically. And so there's something going on here with social media that's allowing us to stay connected and allowing you to stay connected. I mean, we're on a site right now that's allowing us to stay connected and that we can have this live conversation. And so the question I think that I believe we have to ask ourselves, because social media and the internet is a big part of our lives and we live online, a lot of it, particularly during COVID, is you have to ask yourself this question: how does social media affect you? I'm not going to bore you with a bunch of studies. I do that to my kids all the time. I'm like, hey, you know what the latest study says about Instagram or Facebook, or not Facebook because they don't watch Facebook, they use Facebook, but Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. And I'm always throwing stuff like that. But what I want them to understand, and what I want you to understand, what I want you to know, is to ask yourself this reflective question: how do I feel after I've used social media? There's been some studies that have been done. There's a study for you that have shown that some individuals, after they've participated in social media for a specific amount of time, over a few hours, they feel that they are less happy, or that they feel like they've lost something, or if they don't participate, they feel this thing called FOMO, which we'll talk about, fear of missing out, where that there's stuff going on and they want to be a part of it. So social media affects us. Sometimes it makes us grumpy, sometimes it makes us happy, but it affects us. And I think the first thing that we need to do as followers of Christ, and to develop a good mental health while using social media, because it's our life that we live in, is you need to ask yourself this question. Maybe every day, maybe once a week, talk with your parents about it, talk with a leader about it. How does social media make me feel? Does it make me feel sad? Does it make me hate myself? Does it make me feel happy? Does it make me feel joyful? What does social media do for you? And be honest with yourself. I think that's important. So social media is everywhere, and these are some of the ideas of what social media looks like. So not just like Snapchat or Instagram or TikTok, but there's a whole variety of ways that we connect online. And that's the reality. We live in a different world. It's a new digital world. So I'm old enough to remember when dial-up came in. I'm old enough to remember old internet that was really, really slow. I remember when the first iPhone came out. I remember when social media like Facebook, and then Twitter, and then Instagram and Flickr and different social media places, and Tumblr and different social media apps came online. And some of you might not remember a time before that. This is just the way that you've lived your life, but we are living in what we call a new digital world. And the way I understand this, and maybe this will be helpful for you, is that I imagine the world we live in pre-COVID, I would say pre-COVID, as what we call digital duality. Means two. Duality just means two. Digital, obviously, the virtual space of online. And so the world of digital duality is this: that there's a digital space and there's a physical space. Right now, I'm in a physical space at some Pacific college, but I'm talking to you in a digital space, right? So in the past, we would have those separated. So if I am gaming with my friends online, or if I'm in a chat room, or if I'm doing something digitally, that's separate from my real life. That's the way we would talk. The language we use is important. In my real life, my real physical face-to-face conversations, right? That was the world that we lived in, where it was separated, and we were able to separate what we did online from living our real life. And what's important about that, because when it comes to our relationship with Jesus, it was the real life that affected our relationship with Jesus. What we did online, digitally, that wasn't as important. But what we did in real life with other people, that's what was important. But now, during COVID, and even before, a few years before, we're seeing this developing, we would call a hybrid lifestyle. A researcher downstate named Angela Gurrell talks about this term in her book called Always On. And it's about how do we live as faithful followers of Christ in what we call a hybrid lifestyle world that we live in. This is the world we live in now, where there's a digital space and a physical space, but they're not separate. We live in both spaces at the same time. So the best way that I understand this, and hopefully this is helpful, I don't know if many of you have seen a hybrid vehicles. You know, there's electric vehicles and then the gas-powered vehicles. Well, my father-in-law owns a hybrid, and so what it is, it's a gas vehicle, but it's also electric. So when you're starting off and you're going, it's the electric engine is moving you, and up to a certain speed, the gas engine doesn't turn on. But then at some point, the gas engine turns on and it accelerates you so you can get up to highway speeds and things like that. But it saves you on gas. When you stop at a stoplight, the car turns off, and just the electric motor gets you going again. So there's times when the car is running on electric or on gas, and times when they're both working together, where it's being powered by gas, but it's charging the electrical engine, or the electrical engine is helping with the momentum of the car. So still one car, but it's being operated in two different ways. I think that's what hybrid lifestyle, and we can even say a hybrid spirituality looks like, is that we live in both worlds. Sometimes we're in the digital world, sometimes we're in the physical world, but the two work together. It's the same life. And the difference between digital duality and a hybrid lifestyle is that how we live our lives online is just as equal as how we live our lives in the physical space. So whether it's websites we visit, whether it's gaming chat rooms we're in, whether it's social media that we're engaged in like Instagram, like YouTube, stuff we're sharing, even the games we're playing. And this is something I think we need to really think about, something that I'm working on, and my students are going to be helping me with this as we look at our class contemporary youth issues, and we look at gaming. How does our gaming affect our relationship with Jesus? In a digital world of digital duality, when the game I play is separate, it doesn't affect. You know, I could be killing all these people, I could be doing all this, and it doesn't affect my holiness or my spirituality. But what if it does? What if our digital world is now real? And how we live our lives, the thoughts we have, the actions we take online are affecting our relationship with Jesus? I think it's something we need to think about, particularly with the number of games coming out here that celebrate negative and harmful and immoral types of behavior. So I'm not here to judge you and name all the games that I think you shouldn't play, but I think that we need to really think about what we do play. I think we do need to think about what platforms we're on, and the content we're observing, and the content that we are putting up, the comments we are making. Just because we can't see somebody doesn't mean that the words we use don't affect them. And the Bible is very clear that we will be held accountable for every idle word that we say. And I believe that includes what we put online. So while we're living online, we have to remain faithful to Christ and be a faithful follower of him. And so part of doing that is what we're saying and what we're doing online is part of our relationship with Jesus. So hopefully we're understanding that. Right? And so the world we know has changed. It's a new digital world. And so it looks different. How we gather is different, particularly because of COVID. COVID has caused us to gather in different ways. And so these gatherings are what we would call networked publics. I got this, I believe, from a researcher named Hannah Boyd. She talks about this. We're talking about networked publics. And she talks about these are digital spaces or digital arenas where we gather together publicly, but through digital networking. So this is an example of a network public. So you're watching this live. Some of you are watching this live, some of you will watch it's taped later on, but we're creating this public place where we can gather together, and we're using digital technology that allows us to do it. So that's what we would call a network public. And so we're creating these spaces, and COVID is a natural, it just naturally causes us to create these places. And so what I want us to understand today is that there are 4 characteristics of a network public, which is a digital space, that doesn't exist in the physical space. And I believe this affects us and affects the way that we interact. And so the first characteristic is that a network public is permanent. Right? The information you put in a public place, in a network public place, is persistent, meaning that it will stay online. And we know this is true in our minds, even though sometimes we don't act this way. It allows for us to communicate in a way that, like, if I want to communicate with you and you're physically here, I talk to you, I expect you to respond back. But I could text somebody or I could email somebody and they can respond to me 2 days later, and then I can respond a day later, and we have this conversation, this thread going. And so it's kind of a communication because everything's online. I can search my emails or my text messages or my DMs, and I can see what you said and I can go back to that, right? So everything is permanent. It allows to keep an enduring record. And it's important for us to recognize that, because that affects what we put online. That affects how we live our lives. A lot of the research that I'm reading is many people who are now looking for work are going back and scrubbing their Twitter and scrubbing their Instagram and scrubbing their Facebook, because there's things that were permanently there that they didn't want other people to see. And so that's something we need to keep in mind as well when we get to learning about digital skills, what that looks like, keeping in mind about what we're posting. But there is this idea of permanence. The next one, and I thought this one was pretty interesting. The next characteristic is that in network publics, our information is visible by default. In a physical space, if say I have a product, all right, so I have here my iPhone. So say I have my iPhone and I've developed a new kind of phone and I want to get it out to people. In a physical space, I have to go and I have to make it visible and I have to take it to places and go to conferences so people can see it. In a network public, the default is that everything is public and you actually have to work to make it private. So you see the difference? In a physical place, a physical public, you have to work to make things public. But in a network public, you have to work to make things private. So even whether it's our age, whether it's our location, whether it's information, our birth date, our picture, all that stuff is usually by default made public, and we have to work to kind of protect those kind of things. So that's important for us to remember as well, because it's a much more open world. The third characteristic is that the information and everything we share is easily shared with a touch of a button. We can like something which tells other people that we liked it. We can share it. We can share posts. We can take the content, we can screenshot it, and then we can add it to our own Instagram. We can record videos, we can share YouTube videos. There's lots of different ways that we can share, but the key is that in a network public, it's easily shared. Right? You get, I get text of memes and pictures and on Messenger, and I can just share that with whoever I want. And it's like with the touch of a button, I can give thousands of people something that I would have had to take a long time to share that in the past. And so that's part of the network public. And the fourth one here, and this is pretty significant, is that it's easily searched. Everything is kept track of. Even if the apps and the websites say, oh, we're not keeping track, everything is kept track of. Everything that is put online stays online, and it's searchable. You just go to Google, you go to Bing, you go to any search site, and you can search so many things. In fact, today I was just looking up something on a network, and I found my doctoral dissertation. I didn't even know it was there. So everything we do is put there, and it's easily searched. And so I think that's one of the things we have to be reminded of, whether it's geographically tagged posts, whether it's pictures, whether it's tracking software. Our technology and network publics is making it easier and easier and easier to keep track of where people are. And we can search not just for information online, but search for others. Right? I have the wonderful app on my phone that says, I think it's Find My Friends or something like that. And so all my family members, so I want to see where their devices are, or Find My Phone, I think that's what it's called. I open that up and I look, I'm like, oh, that's where my phone is. It was helpful a few years back when my dad lost his cell phone. And so I looked it up, and there it was, and we found it, and he had dropped it, on a trail somewhere when he was at work, but we found his phone because we can search for it. And that's the world we live in. It's just part of what we are. So I think it's important for us, because how we live in these network publics, we have to remember the words we say, the information that we share, the things that we view, it's all permanent, it's all visible by default, it's easily shared, and it's easily searched. And this is the world that I know you live in, and we want to help, I want to help you to live in this world and have good mental health and be a faithful follower of Jesus. And so I think it's important that I'm not going to bore you with tons of studies and tell you all the negatives, but I do want to share with you, I want to share with you 3 benefits that I see in social media, but I also want to share with you 3 costs. And then we're going to move on to looking at some digital skills that we can develop in order to help us. All right, so the first benefit is this, and we won't take much time on this. Most of you will know this, but the first benefit is this, that social media provides a place to belong. All right, it's no secret that particularly in your teenage years, you're trying to figure out who you are and where you fit and who your friends are. I mean, I am now far enough removed from high school that maybe I don't remember it quite right, but I still remember that I wanted to fit in with my friends, that I wanted to find good friends. And I'm sure you're in that place too, particularly during COVID when you're separated physically from your friends. Some of you are really, really struggling, and you're trying to find a place to belong. Well, social media does help us with that. It does help us find places where maybe we don't fit in at school, maybe we don't fit in our neighborhood, but there's a place in social media that we do find. All right, so this can be good, but also we have to remember the potential for danger, particularly if you are using social media in an anonymous way or in a secret way. Right? If that's how you use social media, then maybe something's going on inside in your search for identity that you need to bring somebody along, like an adult, a safe adult, or youth worker, youth leader, or parent, who can help you navigate through that. But it does help us find a place to belong. As well, another benefit is connectivity. Social media allows us to connect to people all over the world. Like I keep contact with friends of mine. We have a group chat, and we're able to talk anytime we want. They live all across Canada, but we can chat anytime we want because we have social media. It allows for that. It allows you for that. It allows my kids to stay connected to their friends during COVID. It allows you to stay connected to your friends. And so I think that's a positive thing because it allows us to stay connected, particularly using things like DMs or gaming sites where you're able to talk during COVID, because that helps us with our mental health. And then the third benefit is that it's a great place to share ideas. So shared ideas, there's so many dances you can learn on TikTok. There's so many Pinterest things. I don't even know if you use Pinterest, but there's so many ideas on things you can make and things you can bake and all that on Instagram and things like Pinterest, and just tons of different ideas and ways to connect with people. And I think that's positive when we share our ideas. Again, we need to be careful. There are negatives, but the positive side, I think, is that social media now gives you a voice. Maybe you don't feel heard. Maybe you don't feel that people care about your opinion, but social media allows you to have a voice and allows you to be heard. And I think that can be positive for our identity development and for us as we grow. So those are some benefits. There are also some costs, and three costs. Right? FOMO, you guys know this word. I don't need to explain. Fear of missing out. Whether it's FOMO of I see what my friends are doing online and I'm not part of it, and then I feel pretty negative. What is it about me that they don't want to include me? So then a lot of negative self-talk happens. I'm not good enough. They don't want to hang out with me. And a lot of times it's just lies we're telling ourselves. We're setting up this false image of who we are. Right? So FOMO can cause that. FOMO as well is that we always feel like we need to be online or we're going to miss something. You know, I have something about myself that my wife and my family knows, that I don't like to go to bed at night because I feel like I'm going to miss out on something. Right? I just want to stay up because what if something good comes on TV? What if something happens that I'm going to miss out on? So sometimes it's hard to go to bed. And maybe some of you are like that I have to go on Instagram. I have to go and check my snaps. I have to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to miss out on something that's important. Right? That's what FOMO does, and that's a cost because it's costing us joy. It's costing us being in the moment. It's costing us part of our life. And so I think it's important that as you reflect on how social media affects you, that you take into consideration that as well. The second cost is what I call the happiness effect. This comes from a book called The Happiness Effect, where a study was done where a researcher in her class on social media, she had them lock their phones away for a week in a vault so they couldn't get them. And then they recorded the results and they talked about what social media does to us. And one of the things she found is that she said this, that the requirement to appear happy on social media, regardless of what a person actually feels, is the happiness effect. right? So I have to portray myself in such a way on Instagram or on TikTok that I'm having a great time, that my food is amazing, that my life is amazing, that my friends are amazing, that everything's always happy. And we don't want to be down. We want to portray a certain self. And so we've become a generation, not just iGen, but a whole culture in Canada and North America, what a friend of mine would call a delete that culture. And basically it's I'm gonna take a selfie, and I'll look at it, not delete that. Take another one, no, delete that. Oh, and we have to get the perfect picture. We have to get the perfect setup. And I don't know if any of you struggle with this, or any of you see it, where you have to take a bajillion selfies and pictures just to get the perfect one to portray a certain image, because you feel that people need to see you in a certain light, or you want to be portrayed in a certain light. And so this is called the happiness effect, because instead of making us happy, it actually robs us of joy. It actually robs us of the happiness that we're searching for, because as my wife likes to say, comparison is a thief of joy. We're constantly comparing ourselves to other people on social media, and we don't quite measure up. So I think that's important for us to recognize as a cost, social media. And the third cost is this, and this is the most important: loss of innocence, right? There's no argument that there's evil in our world. We live in a world that's broken, and there's brokenness, and there's hurt, and there's pain, and many of you have experienced hurt and pain and brokenness. What social media does is it opens the doorway, right? So what you could have been exposed to before social media, say, is this, but now what you can be exposed to is this because of social media. Right, so this is why it's so important to have boundaries, time boundaries. How much time do you spend on social media? Content boundaries. What are you watching? What are you looking at? Is it killing your self-esteem? Is it destroying the innocence, your childhood innocence? What is it that you're looking at? So whether it's somebody on there wants to hurt you or cause you harm, or you see something you can't unsee, or you watch something you wish you never watched, social media can cause us to lose our innocence. And I think that's a significant cost. And so my prayer for you, and if you're watching this and social media is costing you your innocence, you need to talk to somebody. You need to reach out to your leader, to a parent, to a trusting adult who can help you navigate the loss of innocence, because it's something serious in our world, and we're seeing it more and more and more because of social media. So social media is not a bad thing. I don't want to rail against it. Right? My kids have social media accounts, and my wife and I, we monitor that with them, and we talk about that with them, because we recognize this is the world we live in. We also have to recognize the dangers. Right? I'm not going to let my kids go swimming in shark-infested waters. Right? I'm gonna help them know the boundaries. Hey, there's a boundary. Don't go past this. If you go past this, there's sharks. But if you're in here, you're safe. So I think the same thing for us, the same thing for you, is that have people around you that are going to help you. And so this is what I want to do: is I want to help you. I want to give you some digital skills that I believe can help you with your social media and how you engage in social media. So I want to look at six here, six digital skills. And again, if you have questions, just throw them in the text thing there, and we'll try and get to them as at the end if we can. But there's six digital skills. The first one is this: is you need to develop a thick skin, but not too thick. So I want to explain what that means, because maybe that's a little bit confusing. So when you're on social media, as we've already talked, it opens you up to these network publics, places where people you don't even know can see the content that you're saying, right? So maybe you're on there and you're sharing your faith, and you're telling people how you love God and you read the Bible. You want them to read the Bible and experience God. And all these people that you don't know that are observing you, maybe it's on TikTok or something, or YouTube or something, all these negative comments come in, they're bashing your faith, and then they start bashing your body image, and then they just start bashing you. And sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with what you posted. There's just people who are mean. Right? So when you post stuff online, you have to know this, that there's going to be negative criticism. So if you're going to live in that world, you have to develop a thick skin, but not too thick, because if you begin to separate your emotions from what you're hearing, and you stop feeling towards that, then you stop feeling. And two things can happen. Number one is that you lose joy, you lose hurt, you lose pain. And I know it sounds like it's an oxymoron or a paradox, but it's really pain and sorrow that allows us to experience the full love and healing of Jesus. Because without pain and suffering, there would be no salvation, because Jesus would never have died on the cross. And so it allows us to feel the fullness and the experience the fullness of God and his love, but it's not fun to go through. But so if we divorce ourselves from our emotions, we separate ourselves from our emotions, we stop feeling that, and it hinders our relationship with Jesus. But not only that, it takes away our empathy. When we're observing things through a screen, we no longer see people, we just see words or images, and we lose empathy, and then we can in turn become the bully. We can in turn become the one who's picking on others and being the one who's hurting others. And so I think that's important for us to remember as well. So develop a thick skin, but not too thick. You don't want to become so hard and you no longer feel joy. So my suggestion to you with this, in developing a thick skin, is have a mentor, have an older adult who you trust, whether it's your parent or an aunt or an uncle or a youth worker or a youth leader, somebody you and your parents trust. Have them in your life where you can talk about this. You know, I feel really hurt about this. This is what's going on. Somebody you can cry with, somebody who can help you, can just be there with you to help you walk through these emotions, because it's important not to run from them, but to face them, but don't face them alone, right? Part of developing a thick skin is walking along somebody who can help you develop that as well. So that's the first skill. The second skill here is that we want to learn to be authentic. You want to learn to be authentic and honest without being anonymous. I think this is important. One of the things that, in the book, The Happiness Effect, that we talked about earlier, one of the costs of social media and living a life online, is that students consistently expressed that the only way they felt they could be truly who they were and express truly what they thought was as if they were either anonymous or the post wasn't permanent. And so we know network publics are permanent. You can't, even things like Snapchat, that Snap disappears, but you can screenshot it. There's still stuff on servers, there's still stuff online. So nothing's impermanent online. And so we feel like we have to be anonymous. So things like Ask FM, you know, like different websites that allow you to be anonymous and post whatever you want. Well, we know what happens because people get really negative really fast, particularly if there's a filter. You're being, like, there's a screen, you don't see who you're hurting. And I think that is that can be very detrimental to us. And so we have learned that I'm not going to share my true opinion because somebody might not like it. So I don't feel like I can be my real self online, but I can be my real self on this social media site because I don't have to share my name. I can make up some other name and have a fake email or something like that. And so I think it's important that we need to learn to be authentic without being anonymous, because a couple of things are happening here. Number one is that particularly as teenagers and young adults, and even all the way through adulthood, we see this your identity is being formed, understanding who you are. That's what your identity formation is. Understanding who you are, where you fit, where you belong, who your people are. Those things are what's your vocation, your role in life, your purpose. Those are all about identity. Right? And so if we are living online where we don't feel we could be ourselves, we tend to, number one, we tend to forget or maybe lose who we are, and we try and become like those around us. Right? That happens normally in life anyways. You know, when you're in a group and you have a different opinion, but everybody's like, oh no, this is where this is what we believe. Well, you know, I want to belong, so I'm just going to agree with them. Well, that happens online and as well. So that's one thing. But another important aspect is that part of finding out who you are is you need to try on different roles. Like, who am I? What do I? Whether it's roles at work, whether it's roles with your friends, whether it's roles at school, like where do you fit? And so trying to figure out what your role is, trying to figure out what your identity, social media can help with that because you're expressing yourself in different ways. But if you don't feel like you can be yourself, then you kind of lose that, and you don't get that fullness as well. So identity formation is important. Role exploration, figuring out who you are is important. And so you need to find a way where you can be authentic and safe. And that's the key, right? Like I said, if sometimes you want to be authentic. So I think things like where you just share certain posts on Instagram with just close friends who you know might disagree with you, but they love you for who you are. I think that's important. By finding places in social media that you can engage in that are safe for you to express yourself. So you can be honest, but you can also be visible. I think that's important. And so maybe putting out your authentic self out on the World Wide Web is not the greatest idea. Maybe you shouldn't even be out there. I don't know. But just trying to remember that as you're trying to follow Christ and figure out who you are, figure out your identity. So that's the second skill. The third skill I want to suggest to you is that you need to practice living in the moment. This is something. This is where I see it. This concept of for some reason, the research shows us that we tend to want to record everything, and not even research. You can just see it. You watch a video clip of a concert. What do you see? Everybody's doing this, right? Recording the video, and some people are watching through. I've fallen to this this trend as well. I go to my daughter's basketball games or my son's hockey games, and what am I doing? If I'm not coaching, I'm watching like this. You know, I'm recording because what if they do something great? I want to make sure I capture it for all time. And yeah, we want to capture those moments. We want to have those moments. But if we're always like this, what happens is we're no longer experiencing it. We're watching an experience. We're not having an experience. And so, yeah, we'll have it all the time, but when everything is permanent like that, you go back and watch it. Sometimes there are hurtful things in your life that will trigger those moments, and you can't move on past that. You can't develop new experiences when you're always looking back to the past. We see this in the Old Testament, particularly in the book in the Exodus, in the book of Exodus, when the Israelites are leaving. And sorry, that was my Siri. But in the book of Exodus, where the Israelites are leaving Egypt and they're moving on and they're moving on, and they keep looking back. Oh man, this is a new experience, but I wish we were back here. I wish we were back here. And that's sometimes what photos and pictures and all that does. And it's not bad to remember, and it's good to remember. But sometimes in our lives, we need new experiences with Jesus. Right? We don't want to always be reminded of the past. We do want to be reminded of the past, but we want to be living in the now. And so we miss out on some of the now. We miss out on some of the being present, right? That's one of the things that in the research we see that a lot of students, teenagers say is that they just wish that their parents were more present. Like in some of the social media research that I've read, there's a lot of teenagers who are telling their parents, hey, listen, could you put down your phone at dinner time? Because their parents are on the phone and they're not focused. Like, can you pay attention to me for a moment? And so we're seeing that. So we want to practice living in the moment. So if you're watching this and you're an adult, you're a parent or you're a youth worker, this is something we need to practice in order to model to the younger generation. And if you're a younger generation, if you're a teenager or a preteen and you're watching this, you can model this for your parents. Right? You can help mentor them as well. Like, that it's good to put it down for a while and just live in the moment. Let's talk about the moment. Let's talk about the day. I think that is important for us. The fourth digital skill, we got two more after this, and then I noticed that we got some questions. My tech guy has been texting me, so we'll answer a couple of those when we get there. But just a couple more here. Practice being alone, bored, and still. When I went over this seminar with my kids, my daughter just did not like this one at all. Neither did my son. But you know what's funny? I don't like this skill either. I love to go to Disneyland, but you know what I do when I'm in the lineup waiting for a ride? On my phone. And let's play a game. Let's play heads up, or I'm going to go on this. Or when I'm at the grocery store now, particularly since we have to be 6 feet apart, you know, the line's like massively long. What do? I pull up my phone. When I'm watching a show that I haven't PVR'd, which I know is a boomer word, but I haven't recorded, or if I'm watching YouTube or something and there's a commercial that I can't fast forward, what do? I go on my phone. Or if I'm watching a show, but there's a part that's kind of boring, what do? I go on my phone. Because we don't like to be alone, we don't like to be bored, and it's really difficult in our culture to be still. And so my suggestion to you is that we have to learn to be alone, bored, and still. Because when we are alone and bored, what happens is what we call an internal dialogue. We learn to talk to ourselves, not in a weird kind of creepy way, but we learn to talk to ourselves in order to develop the thoughts and the ideas that we have. And this is where creativity is born. This is where imagination happens. Right? And we're losing that in our culture. We're losing the ability to do that because we're forgetting how to talk to ourselves and be bored. Not only that, when we're still, that's when we hear the voice of God. When there's nothing else around us, when our notifications are turned off, our phones are turned off, we have nothing around us, we can then hear the voice of God. And so when we aren't practicing being alone, bored, and still, we're actually hurting our relationship with Jesus because we're not listening for his voice, because we're not learning to be creative and grow in our relationship with him, because we're not thinking about it and reflecting on it. And those are all important ways that we grow in our relationship. So if you want to stay mentally healthy living online, and if you want to be faithful to Jesus living online, then this is a really important skill to develop. Practice being alone, bored, and still. And it's going to be terrible at first. Trust me, it's going to be, don't start huge. Don't say, I'm going to do it for an hour. Start small, right? Maybe even start with something like what we call a technology Sabbath. So take an hour a day and turn off your phone completely, right? Take a day a month or a day a week. Take a week, a year, build up to it. All right, and find places where you can just be alone. Go for a walk in nature. Leave your phone behind. Leave your AirPods behind. Just you and nature. Something where it's just you're just alone. All right. The fifth skill here is remember who you represent. I think this is important. I don't have to say too much about this. That we represent Jesus. I remember quite a few years ago they had that trend. You know, what would Jesus do? Bracelets. But sometimes it's difficult for us to really picture what would Jesus do or what would Jesus be pleased with. Right? Sometimes it's difficult for us to do it. So my suggestion, a practical way for you is think about your youth work pastor, or youth worker, or your parents, your grandparents, people you love that you want to honor that follow Christ. What would they think reading your tweet or reading watching your video on TikTok, or what would they think about what if you're watching with your grandparents? What would they think? Maybe that could be a good barometer. But remember that we represent Christ, and everything that we post online, I believe we're going to be held accountable for. Just like everything I say, I'm going to be held accountable for. It can be terrifying as a follower of Christ, but God is a God of grace and love, and he loves us, and he wants to help us follow him. And so to be faithful for him, we're learning what it means to post things that are God honoring and not things that are not God honoring. So those are some ideas as well. The last one here, and I think very significant, is know when to quit. There are two types of quitting, right? We always hear, okay, I don't want you to be a quitter. I always tell my kids, I don't want you to quit. I want you to persevere, and I want you to keep going. But there is a time when you need to quit. And there's two types of quitting here. The one is permanent, where you delete it, deactivate your account, you delete the app, and you never go back. And that's important, particularly for apps and for technology and social media that causes you to walk away from Christ, that you can't control, that you're addicted to, that are just too much for you. And that we have those in our lives. And if you have something like that, you have to walk away and you have to turn off, and you need accountability. You need somebody in your life to do it. Again, a parent, a youth worker, youth leader, youth pastor, a significant adult who can help you, a mentor who can help you walk away and hold you accountable to that. The second type of quitting is where you quit temporarily. So for me, I know this really shows my age. I love to play Clash of Clans and Clash Royale. Those are my two favorite games on my phone. But there are times when I delete it for a week or a month, and I deleted Clash of Clans for a year once. Why? Because I just found I was playing too much, and not all my free time, I wasn't being alone. Every time I had a moment, I just go on it, because it's easier to do that than to be alone with my thoughts, to be alone with God. So I didn't want that. So there are times when I quit, and then it helps me to develop discipline in my life so that I can be disciplined to listen to God and not be captivated by what's on my device and by what social media. So maybe if you're finding that your Instagram, you're always on Instagram, you're always watching hours and hours of YouTube or whatever it is, you're gaming for hours a day, whatever it is, maybe it's time to quit temporarily. You're not losing all your stuff. You're not losing all your friends. You're just taking a break in order to develop good mental health and to help you remain faithful to Jesus as you live for him. So those are just some ideas, some digital skills that we can develop. So the next few minutes here, we got some questions. So I'm just going to take a look here, and hopefully I'll be helpful in answering these questions as we go along. So here's a good question. Would you recommend students have their parents follow all their social media accounts? So would you recommend students have their parents follow all their social media accounts, and why? That's a really good question. I think it's important that at least one parent is connected to their social media account, but I think that you can't do it in a secretive way. I think it needs to be an open conversation. Right? Before they even get a social media account, I think that parents need to have a conversation with their kids about the benefits and the dangers, but mostly about the parameters. Maybe you have a written contract down, and I think it's important that parents stay engaged, not so that they can be big brother and watching and be the big meanie, oh, I saw you did this, oh, I saw you did this, I saw you did this, because we want to help our teenagers. I'll give you from my perspective. I want to help my kids. My wife and I want to help our kids to navigate the online world that they are living in to the best of their ability and faithfully follow Christ. And we know people will make mistakes. We know that we'll do things wrong, but we want to have grace that Jesus has, but we also want to follow the truth of God and helping them to live honorably online. And so, yeah, I do think it's imperative that parents are connected somehow to their social media, but not in a way where it's policing, not in a way where it's like, I'm going to find out when you do something bad, I'm going to punish you for it, but in a way that creates a dialogue. Right, so that your kids can feel safe coming to you, say, you know what, kind of messed up a little bit, can you help me? Or you can say, you know what, I noticed you posted this, what's going on? And have conversation and try and again, we're not perfect as parents, we don't get it right every time, and sometimes I get upset and I said, you shouldn't be doing that, or what, because you know, I'm parents, when they react to that, they're afraid, they want to protect their kids. Right, so I think hopefully that answers your questions. That I think, yeah, it is important, but you need to have a conversation. And what this does as well is parents, we also need to recognize that there is a world of youth culture that we are not a part of and we will never be a part of. And we can't get away from that, but we're trying to help our students to be responsible followers of Christ in the online world in which they are immersed in, even if we're not. And so, yeah, following them. And so if that doesn't answer it fully, you can respond back. Another question, what are some faith-based website blogs that help navigate social media for parent, teens, and leaders? What a fantastic question that is. One of my favorite ones is it's cpyu.org, and I don't know if we'll have a place to maybe, Josh, if you could text that in there into the thing. CPYU, Center for Parent Youth Understanding, is one of my go-tos. It's American-based, but Dr. Walt Mueller is the founder and owner of that, and he has tons of updates. In fact, one of the things that they've just put in place is what they call table talks, where they give these devotionals, that because more people are having dinner around the table now in the evening because everybody's at home. So what do I talk to my kids about? Well, here's some table talks that allow you to have some good spiritual discussions with your kids. They also look at all the different trends. They look at different movies. Websites like Plugged In helps you to assess movies and TV shows that your kids want to watch. So if my kids say, hey, I want to watch this TV show, I'll go there, I'll check it out. I'll go to Common Sense Media, I'll check it out. That will help me to kind of to know too. And you know what, if you're not sure, you can't find anything, just email me at Summit, aevans@summitpacific.ca. If you email me, I'm happy to respond and point you in the right direction of where you could be looking for those kind of resources. And then here's another one. Having this many boundaries, rules, and guidelines may not be very exciting for students. Is it an option for students to have thriving relationships and community during this pandemic without social media? I think that's also a good question. I think that yeah, I think they can, but we have to be creative in how we do that. Particularly, we have to be honoring to our government and to Bonnie Henry, who's guiding us in this time. That we want to make sure we're thinking through what we're doing. So whether that's in a gathering, like I know with my kids, they're really good friends with their cousins, so they'll come over and they'll just kind of. So one of the things they do, I know this is where the digital or the hybrid lifestyle comes in place. So they'll come and they sit 6 feet apart, but they're all playing like Uno or something on their phone or some kind of game that they can interact together. So they're talking to each other, they're playing cards, but they don't have to physically touch cards. So they're using social media, but in a physical space. So maybe that's one way that you can do it. Finding other games that you could do. I've seen online people do parking lot youth groups, parking lot gatherings. Just make sure we honor the social distancing, the physical distancing parameters that are put in place. But I read this the other day. I think that one person said, one researcher said that it's not going to be like digital spaces and social media aren't going to be an add-on anymore. But instead, we're going to live in a digital world, and the physical will be the add-on, something along that lines. And I wonder, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know things have changed. And so hopefully, finding ways to connect to all your students, because there are vulnerable kids in your youth ministries, if you're a youth pastor or a youth worker watching this, who don't have access to the internet. They don't have apps, they don't have a data plan, they can't connect. And so you have to find creative ways, write them letters, have students write their friends letters, send each other postcards. I think that'd be fantastic. You know, like it'd be awesome. Just the old days. We tell our kids all the time about the olden days when Nellie and I used to write letters when I was in college, and I pulled out the letters the other day, these letters that we had written back and forth to each other before email was a thing. And so things like that, have them talk on the phone, which is totally scary for this generation. but maybe those are good skills that they can develop as well. So hopefully those help. And I think my biggest desire is that in watching this, whether you're a teenager or you're a parent or you're a youth worker, that we would realize that we are living in an online world. So this hybrid spirituality, online and physical world, the online, parents, we need to understand this, the online for our students and for our kids are just as real as the physical. It might not be for us, but it is for them. And so we need to learn how to live with those together, but in a way that honors Christ and a way that they can remain mentally healthy. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer any questions and talk about it. And I believe that's it. So God bless you. Let me just pray with you before you go, and thank you for taking the time to tune in and for your questions. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for all those that have watched this and will watch this in the future. I thank you, God, that you give us guidelines and you help us to know how to live in this world, but not just the physical world, but also the digital world. So I pray that you would guard the hearts of the young people and the adults and all the individuals listening and who are on social media and who are trying to honor you in their hybrid lifestyle. And I just pray that you would help us, guide us, give us wisdom, so that we can follow you in ways that are faithful and honoring, and that you can help us as we keep our minds pure for you, Christ, and that we can have good mental health and we are not torn down by the enemy, and that we can use social media in a powerful way to reach people for Jesus and also to stay connected in this world that is going online. So thank you for this opportunity and this honor, and I pray that you would bless everyone that is listening and that you would give them peace and health. In Jesus' name, amen. Take care.